Welcome to the Living Shelter podcast, where we explore ways to create healthy, energy-efficient, and joyful places to live. I'm your host, Terry Phelan, a Pacific Northwest native and an architect with over 30 years' experience designing with a focus on sustainable options. I am delighted to be presenting this podcast series as the Director of Sustainable Practice at Board & Vellum, an integrated design firm based in Seattle. Living Shelter's goal is to help you expand your green knowledge toolkit so together we can help build a resilient future that includes comfortable and sustainable places for everyone to live. Our guests share their years of experience in one or more of the many facets of the green and natural building industries, with topics like material choices for health and wellness, energy efficiency and carbon reduction, regenerative site design, waterway health, and other big picture ideas from thought leaders we think you'll find inspiring. In this episode of Living Shelter, we're going to talk about hemp as a building product. Hemp has a long history of industrial use due to its strength and ability to grow quickly without much input of fertilizer or irrigation. It appears to be one of the first plants to be spun into usable fiber over 50,000 years ago. Its use was banned in the USA in 1937 due to an association with its cousin cannabis sativa, and has only recently become available once more in the marketplace. As an agricultural product, hemp can sequester carbon and store it in both the fiber and in the soil, keeping it out of the atmosphere until it is burned or decomposes. A few companies have been making advances in how hemp is processed and applied as building products. And Jonnie Pedersen of Idaho-based Hempitecture is with us today to talk about some exciting developments with this valuable material. Hi, Jonnie, and thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's start by clearing the air. Is hemp the same plant as marijuana?
So this is a question we get a lot. Cannabis sativa has a long history of human use. A lot of ancient cultures didn't necessarily grow the plant to get high, but as fibers for textiles and rope and herbal medicines, originating in Asia around 500 BC. But the history of cannabis cultivation in the United States dates back to the early colonists who grew hemp for textiles and rope. But like you had mentioned, political and racial factors in the 20th century led to the criminalization of marijuana in the United States, which also included industrial hemp. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of a changing landscape that we're seeing today. But what we use in our building products is industrial hemp, which is kind of the cheapest and easiest subspecies to produce. It's grown for its fibrous stalks and edible seeds, and industrial hemp is generally low in cannabinoids, including both THC and CBD. And it's actually often grown as a cover crop to draw up pesticides and herbicides before a food crop is planted. Oh. So this fast-growing plant has recently seen a resurgence of interest because of its multi-purpose applications. It's definitely a treasure trove of phytochemicals and a rich source of woody fibers and other great components for soil health.
Yeah, it seems to be this, like, almost a magic bullet. I mean, I buy hemp seed to put in my smoothies.
Yeah, omegas, right?
And proteins.
Yeah,
and then,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I know that industrial hemp, I remember, hemp rope. That was how they made rope, 200 years ago. That was the fiber that was used. And I think George Washington grew hemp on his property.
I think at one point, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I have heard that at one point, if you were a farmer, it was illegal to not grow hemp. I don't know if that's true or not. Somebody should fact check that and get back to me.
Yeah, that sounds – I can see that. I can see that as being a rule because of all the good things that it does. Mm-hmm. So now is hemp available? Is it legal everywhere in the United States, or is that still a changing landscape?
So industrial hemp specifically is now officially legal in all 50 states.
Very good.
Idaho, where we are based out of, was actually one of the last states to legalize the production and growth of industrial hemp. Now we can grow it and work with it, which is great.
That is great. I remember several years ago it being, you had to go to Canada to get your hemp raw materials to do hemp fabrics or
Clothing,
any of the
yeah. Even seed, too. There is still a lot of complications and conversations and legalities around hemp because when the hemp bill passed originally in 2018, a lot of farmers went to CBD hemp. And so now we're kind of seeing the conversation focus back on industrial hemp. And so we're still really working on those seed genetics and the legalities of growing it, especially with the legalization of marijuana use in states.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So there have been lots of other natural products that I have been aware of, and there are probably some that I haven't, but I was involved in a lot of straw bale design and construction 30 years ago, and I'm familiar with light straw clay and rammed earth, all these other natural building materials and methods. Why hemp instead?
That's a great question. Hemp is kind of an emerging conversation too in the building side of things. A lot of folks out there who know as hemp within building materials may have heard of hempcrete, which is like a hemp lime biocomposite builder that you mix with water. And it's not to get kind of mixed with concrete because it's not a load-bearing, non-structural material, but it kind of works as a wall replacement. So it replaces your insulation, it replaces your drywall, those types of things. So kind of similar as rammed earth in that sense. Hempcrete homes kind of require minimal heating and cooling because of its unique combination of a really good R value and its strong thermal mass. So the building's ability to absorb heat and release it back into the interior space when the temperature drops outside.
Right. And hempcrete is where I was first exposed to hemp as a building product. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was doing straw bale work, one of my instructors that I was learning from was saying, hemp's far too valuable to put into buildings. We need to be saving it for other things.
Oh, interesting.
But that was before hemp herds were being separated out, and that the hemp herds are what you're using now. Was that just for hempcrete?
That is just for hempcrete, but I think hemp is a really incredible plant because of how regenerative it is. So while in America we're still kind of developing it's called the decortication process, which essentially after the hemp crop grows, which it can grow in about 90 days, that material is laid to wet or dry in the field. And because those stalks are so fibrous and strong, it has to go through this decortication process that essentially pulls the fibers apart. And then you get like the hemp hurd, which is used, it looks like wood chips, it's used in the hempcrete, or hemp fibers, which we use in our non-woven technology, which creates like this hemp wool fiber bat insulation. So you can get a lot of different products out of industrial hemp. I think it's just the developing landscape of making sure that genetics are right for the type of fiber used or material used. And yeah, I don't know. There's still a lot with like building codes and everything too.
Right. I'm trying to understand for myself and also for our listeners, why is hemp better than straw?
Ooh, okay. I understand what you're asking now. Hemp is better than straw in the sense that it is I haven't built much with straw bale houses, so please keep this in mind. But hemp is it's rapidly regenerative, and so it grows really quickly, and it also replenishes soil health while it grows. I don't necessarily know the characteristics of hay as a plant, but I also know that hemp is something we call hygroscopic, and so it breathes moisture really well, so it won't mold or mildew, which I've heard can be sometimes an issue with straw bale houses.
It can if there's liquid moisture that is kind of trapped in the walls. That's the one place that straw does decompose is if it remains wet.
Yeah.
So hemp actually draws the moisture
through it. Yeah, and they've seen so Hempitecture kind of got its start. Maddie Mead, our CEO and founder, started Hempitecture as a dorm room idea, kind of looking at biomaterials for alternatives because he was watching this new garbage dump facility just grow and grow. And a lot of the materials that he was seeing in there were building materials. So over the last decade, he's been working with hempcrete. And in Europe, in his research, he saw that in Europe, they're opening up these buildings that are 100 plus years old, and it's hempcrete. And
really?
it's just lasting way longer than they expect the life of the building to ever last. Other building methods that they've seen around, like ancient Europe, is like how lime can help close any like potential gaps or developed holes from leakages.
It's like self-healing. If you re-wet it, it'll heal over. Yeah, I'm very enamored with lime as a finish material for like lime plasters, but also as a binding agent.
Yeah, it's a beautiful material.
So hempcrete is basically hemp herds and lime.
Yep, and water.
And water.
And a lot of mixing and time
and
labor.
And that's probably why hempcrete didn't take off quite so fast.
Yeah, it's a very exciting material, but I think when Tommy Gibbons, our CIO and co-founder, joined the team, they were trying to figure out what was scalable. And hempcrete, all the projects that they've done around the U.S., that's kind of like a hard company to develop, is building these specialty homes that take a lot of time and labor. And not everybody has time and labor. And so that's where hemp wool came in, is everybody needs insulation. All buildings need sound attenuation improvements or draftiness. And so hemp insulation is just this fiber bat, healthy material that's non-toxic. You can handle it. Anybody can work with it. And it just goes into the same place you'd see traditional insulation go.
You're listening to Living Shelter. I'm your host, Terry Phelan, and I'm talking with Jonnie Pedersen of Hempitecture about natural building products and materials. Jonnie, I understand that you're resourcing the hemp in a way that you can track the supply chain. Is all your hemp coming from the U.S.?
That's a great question. So a lot of our materials that are all of the materials that are actually coming out of our newly opened manufacturing facility in Idaho has been from Montana. Our partners out there have the decortication manufacturing process that I had mentioned. And so it's really exciting. We even went out there this summer, and you could see and go to the farmer's land. So you're seeing this crop go from like seed to insulation. You get to watch the entire life cycle of this material, which I think is so exciting.
Yeah, such a short growing period that it can happen in front of your eyes. I hear there can be like 3 crops in a year.
Yeah, it's so cool to be able to track a material down to its source, especially in this kind of climate we're in talking about where our materials are sourced and where they come from and what kind of labor goes into it.
Yeah, it's like the farm to table movement in restaurants. It's like farm to building.
Right? Shop local.
Yeah.
We love it.
Right now you're getting your supply from one location, but I imagine as the market grows and as you're able to scale up, you'll need to go to other locations. Do you have a system in place for tracking, like a chain of custody?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are some really exciting agricultural partners across the United States and even in Canada that are really developing these materials that we can use, these raw materials that we can use in our manufacturing line. And so that traceability is a really great question that I'm going to pose to my manufacturing team because they obviously work the closest with the materials coming in, but I'm pretty sure there is a way that we can easily track that.
Yeah. Well, I know that they do that with like FSC-certified lumber and some even non-certified lumber in the States is they have tracking systems. So I was just wondering if you were like writing that same wave, or if you had something else
that could make
going.
a really cool storyline for the insulation, right? It shows up at somebody's house and they're like, wow, this is who grew my materials.
Yeah.
I'll have to think about that.
I buy like pasture-raised eggs, and it's like, this is where your chickens live.
Oh, I love that. Meet Frank.
Yes. Let's step back for just a minute. You mentioned embodied carbon and how
Yes.
hemp is a way of addressing our carbon conundrum. And there's a lot of embodied carbon in building materials. And I know that that's, architects have a real responsibility to respond to that with using materials that have less embodied carbon. How are natural agricultural materials a better choice?
Yeah, great question. So the built environment generates about 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions. That's more than any other sector of the economy, more than transportation, agriculture, and other industries. So for the built environment, embodied carbon kind of refers to the sum of all the greenhouse gas emissions, mostly carbon dioxide, that result from the mining, harvesting, processing, manufacturing, transportation, and installation of these building materials. So the embodied carbon footprint is kind of, therefore, the amount of carbon to produce a material from start to finish. Cradle to grave is like kind of another word you'll hear for that. Mm-hmm. And so in contrast, operational carbon kind of refers to the greenhouse gas emissions due to buildings' energy consumption, which we see as a huge part of the net zero building efforts. And so embodied carbon is really important to add to these net zero efforts because we can't achieve those climate action goals that we have for the entire world if we don't also look at the source for these products.
Right.
And so something that's like made from a raw agricultural commodity like hemp wool is essentially turning your building into these carbon storing spaces. Hemp wool comes from a carbon negative feedstock. Industrial hemp has been researched to absorb around 9 tons of CO2 per acre grown. And since we're growing that within 600 miles of our facility and working from a manufacturing line that is utilizing 100% renewable energy resources from Idaho Green Power's program.
Oh, that's so cool.
I know. I just saw the newsletter come out. I was so excited about that. Yeah, so you're kind of seeing this like carbon negative material that you can put into your house. And then that is something that you get to like brag about and be like, my house is a carbon negative space. Like that's why embodied carbon matters so much, is because you're like, hey, these materials are sourced or made from like better materials or from somebody that's a farmer a state over.
Yeah, I love the local aspect of it. And my understanding of carbon sequestration and carbon storage is that agricultural materials, whether it's hemp or trees or bamboo, these all store carbon. Mm-hmm. Part of their photosynthesis process is to get carbon dioxide out of the air and hold it in the fibers and in the soil. So those fibers, as long as they remain intact, or at least their the cellular structure is the same, continue to hold that carbon for
its entire lifetime.
For its entire use.
And what's incredible too is the end of use of these materials, these natural bio-based products is, God forbid this ever happens, but if a climate disaster happens, or if a leak springs in your house, and you have to get rid of materials, these aren't toxic materials that'll like bleed into the earth or into the water system. Mm-hmm. These are just natural materials that'll biodegrade over time.
Yeah. And yet they last. When they're put into a building, mm-hmm. they don't break down and biodegrade.
Exactly. Yes. That doesn't happen. I'm at the end of life. But right. These kinds of materials, and with like hemp wool and all these other exciting products we're seeing come out of our manufacturing line are, meant to last the lifetime of the building and beyond. So as long as it's put in correctly in a really good wall space and, a really great wall system, then you're set.
Yeah. So let's talk about hemp wool. You've mentioned it a few times, and I haven't asked any direct questions about it. So hemp wool, right now, it comes in bats, mm-hmm. fiberglass bats that,
you don't
builders
want
have
to
been
touch.
using for over probably 100 years. I'm not sure when fiberglass bats were first manufactured, but maybe 75 years ago. And yet hemp bats are, you can touch them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get slivers from them. You don't get irritation from them.
That's correct.
They don't like put off little fibers into the air that get in, float around and get into your lungs. This is new, right?
It is, and it isn't, right? All of these materials are something that have existed for as long as people have been building with natural materials. But this product is new for the U.S., which is exciting. We have built the first of its kind nonwoven technology in Idaho, where we're producing hemp wool, which is that fiber bat insulation. It's kind of like a one-to-one replacement to traditional conventional insulations like fiberglass or spray foam or mineral wool. Yeah, it is all of those things. And thank you. Yeah, it is non-toxic. And we are seeing people being able to handle this. Obviously, we always recommend following OSHA guidelines, wearing a mask and everything like that. But, it's a lot of people are having like a much easier time working with this material. And especially for people, we get a lot of homeowners and home builders who are choosing these healthier, non-toxic materials and are maybe doing part of the build themselves or improving their households, doing a renovation or a retrofit. So it's just kind of exciting to see these more sustainable, healthier options become part of the building market.
So can people just go to their local
hardware store
and buy these off the shelf? I understand there is a new facility open in our area at the distribution center. Tell me about that. Is that someplace that anyone can go, or is that for just wholesale? Or?
No, that's a great question. So our materials are available to everybody. We sell them directly online, so you can check out buyhempwool.com and you can get a quote, and then those quotes generate some shipping rates from third-party vendors. We don't charge anything for shipping, but it's really exciting to get these new warehouses popping up. So we are up to 5 now. Fife, Washington is a new one. So if somebody was in the area and wanted to go pick it up, we can arrange that. We just added a new one in Loveland, Colorado. We get another one in Reno here soon. We have one in Tennessee, Ohio, and then our main warehouse in Idaho. And so I'd love to be in like building lumber supply and building material supplies in all of these like small towns that I see every time I'm driving around Idaho or Washington. But yeah, we're working to really make these materials as accessible to everybody as possible.
Are they cost comparable to other products that have been on the market for a while?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
we just, especially because we just launched our facility where we were able to like lower our prices like 17% or something like that. And now I'm really excited to say that we're cost comparative to a lot of traditional insulations, and even on the more compared to like premium insulation like mineral wool, we're actually showing to be a little bit less than that. So it's those shipping costs that we're working on, like making it more accessible to everybody by adding these warehouses.
Right. The distribution center should help with that a lot. And is the R value similar in thickness?
Yeah, so it's about 3.7 per square inch. Kind of those similar qualities of hempcrete of hygroscopic, so it breathes really well. It's mold and pest resistant due to the silicates that industrial hemp fibers just naturally have. So you don't have to worry about like any nesting or anything like that. And we have some really exciting research partnerships going on, one with the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge National Lab to study the carbon sequestration of our materials, as well as product development, but also just test these materials. So we'll see a life cycle analysis and EPD coming out here soon.
Great. Yeah, Oak Ridge Laboratories have been on my radar for some time. They did a lot of the early straw bale research on like fire resistance. And is the hemp wool fire resistant as well?
Great question. Another one of our research partnerships has been with the University of Idaho's College of Natural Resources, and we were able to find a VOC ingredient-free, a natural and red list ingredient-free flame retardant that we are adding to our line. And so we should have those ASTM testings here shortly, but everything that we've researched so far has it coming out to a Class A. So you'll see a hemp wool plus with that option here soon.
That's great. I'm really excited about this material, and it's like, is there any reason not to use it?
We hope not.
Yeah. So your new facility in Jerome, Idaho, where you're making this hemp wool material, it's been open for just like 2 months, I believe. I remember seeing the announcement, the grand opening announcement. Do you think that plant has the capacity to meet the demand that's going to be created as the word gets out on this?
Yeah, that our technology is so cool, and I got to shout out Maddie and D. Huddy, Deshawn, for working their tailbones off and building out. It was just the two of them building out the machinery, and they had some engineers come in, and now we're up to 6 or 7 on the team out there. They are just the best. And so that manufacturing line does have the capability of producing millions of square feet of material a year. And not only just like hemp wool insulation, but we're starting to like really experiment with what materials can come out with bio-based fibers. And so like things you're going to see like an acoustic panel. We have an exterior continuous insulation going to come out later this year, like a carpet underlayment. And so, our technology extends beyond just the built environment, but can go into other industries. Cold freight packaging for medicine or food. And so it's hard introducing a new material into the built environment because people are so used to sticking to what is tried and true for them or what works in their spec sheet, what they constantly use. It's already made, so why change it up? And so we're working on getting those minds changed towards these materials and really, showing the larger community what exactly we can do with these bio-based materials.
You're listening to Living Shelter. I'm talking with Jonnie Pedersen of Hempitecture about natural building products that are made right here in the U.S. Jonnie, it seems like things like the hemp wool bat insulation and continuous insulation, you're talking about replacing products that are used to being, specified in buildings, but with like products. So completely different than, the hempcrete application. While it was really exciting to those of us in the deep green building industry, there were lots of hurdles because of the training that was required to do a completely different type of build, to use completely different types of material and processes, and the timelines involved, drying times and everything. It seems to me that the products that you're looking at now are simple switch outs. It's like people aren't going to have to relearn, how to frame a wall to put this insulation in. It's the same size as what they're used to. They just go from fiberglass or denim. I remember when denim bats came out.
Denim is cool, I won't lie.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't have the same R value. Yeah. So as our energy codes got more stringent,
I think they're in the cold freight technology realm, which is great to see.
Yeah.
But yes, we are a 1-to-1 replacement for conventional toxic materials in the built environment, and we not only is this material healthier for those residing in the building, whether they're working in it, living in it, learning in it, but it's also safe for the contractors and builders to work with, which is such an important factor that sometimes can be forgotten in the act of building a building. So yes, we are making a healthier, sustainable option.
Yeah, and using materials that are they're clean-based. They're not coming from a petroleum. It's
Made
not a
in the
petroleum
US.
byproduct. Made in the U.S.
Supports local rural agricultural economy.
Yeah.
Like, it's, I mean, it to me, it seems like the simple choice. Like,
Right. If it's price comparable, I mean, why not? Why would anybody go the old way when there's these new things available? If they're proven, and it sounds like you're working with different organizations that are helping prove their longevity, their safety, their R value, all the things that need to be considered when you're going to change.
We want to replace toxic traditional materials. we're coming for
I
it.
want you to replace toxic traditional materials. There's so many toxins in our environment.
Yes.
And I know a lot of builders that now build green homes, especially homes, the small builders. They went to building green because they got sick. They got sick, creating homes for people and using the products that they were used to, but they were being bombarded with all these toxins without really understanding what they were being bombarded with. And they got sick, and then they realized they couldn't do their work anymore if they didn't change to a natural product or a non-toxic product. And so once they did and realized how it affected their lives, they kind of got on their own bandwagon to educate others.
Cool.
So I can see this. Again, there's so many times that I've handled fiberglass insulation, and it's just like it gets everywhere. It gets in your clothes. You try and wash, and if you use warm water, it just opens up your pores and it goes into your pores. It's nasty, nasty
That's so
stuff.
terrifying, like the pink monster.
Oh, yeah, and the pink stuff's got formaldehyde in it, too.
Oh, man. We used to use asbestos.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't that long ago, but yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard of Parsons Healthy Materials Lab in New York, but they've got a really great research going on and a really great online resource hub for just, everything that goes into a home from the start to finish of building a home and looking at like how toxic certain materials are or what non-toxic alternatives are there. Speaking of podcasts, they also have a good podcast too. And the first season is all about hemp. So yeah, hemp in the built environment actually. So
wonderful. So that's Parsons
Healthy Materials Lab. Parsons New School in New York. It's their Healthy Materials Lab.
That's good. I've heard of Parsons New School. I didn't realize they had a healthy materials lab. That sounds like a great resource.
Yeah, I definitely recommend checking it out.
Great. I'll do that. So you mentioned some new research and development partnerships that you've been working on. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that we haven't touched on in that department? You said the Department of Energy.
Yeah, so Department of Energy at their Oak Ridge National Lab, just doing some product development testing, life cycle analysis, even maybe some carbon impact work on our materials. And then another one has been with University of Idaho, finding a natural VOC-free flame retardant to add to our manufacturing line. Okay. And there's some other exciting developments happening. And, yeah, I don't want to give all of our secrets away, so I'm going to –
Right, yeah. Well, I'm sure there are some things
little surprises are coming up soon. I will say that.
I'm so excited for you guys. I remember visiting Sun Valley where your offices are. I know Jerome is where your manufacturing facility is, but Sun Valley is in Ketchum.
Yes.
Is that right, in Sun Valley? I was visiting there a few years ago and didn't realize until I was there that the office was there. And it's like,
oh, no way.
I missed the opportunity to go tour and,
oh, you'll have to come back
stop
out.
in and talk to Maddie and Tommy. But, yeah, I've had my eye on hempitecture for a while. And
thank you for the support. I mean, it's been, and for myself of being with the company a couple of years now, it's been so fun watching all the twists and turns because I've known Maddie for a number of years now, and seeing the development with him and Tommy has been so cool. And it extends beyond just our company, the support like that you give into us and the community that is so excited to see industrial hemp come alive or green products come alive. It's just kind of this really beautiful union of all of these really great communities and bringing new materials to life.
Well, and community is such a big part of making change, for us to find people who have some similar goals and passions and maybe for different reasons, but, just working together to make change happen.
Community is the solution in my eyes.
Yes, it takes a village for sure.
Yeah, truly.
So something I like to ask all my guests, climate change is affecting us. I mean, we're in it. It's in the future we might be, subject to, crazy weather or, hot summers, drying lakes and waterways. We rely on these things for life. While we're making change, one of the things that I feel like we really need to do is become more resilient in our own lives so that we're ready to weather those storms together. Is there anything you personally might suggest people do?
Gosh, that's such a great question.
Become more resilient around these changes.
Yeah, I got to do resiliency research when I was in undergrad, and it was the concept of it was actually with the refugee community in Boise and for youth and what were the strategies that they were applying to be more resilient, or where was the community needing to support to help build resilience in these children, because children are some of the most resilient creatures of all. And so I think just kind of that same thing that we just spoke about 40 seconds ago of community, right? Of caring for yourself and caring for your community. And you don't have to have all of the answers. You don't have to be 100% perfect at anything, especially with all the chaos that's happening in the world. But pick something, right? Pick something with your friends and say hey, let's work on this, or how can we do little things together? And I think we're seeing that all over. Listen to a good podcast like this one. If you're into building, look at building materials that are greener. Pick the things that you care about and find ways to work from there. I mean, I got into hempitecture because I was interested in sustainable fashion.
Oh, really?
And I made the decision that I wanted to work in sustainability, and now I'm in the green building materials world. So,
Did you go to school for fashion design?
I didn't, actually. I went to school for psychology, and then just in my later 20s was really interested in, activism and fashion and what being green and sustainable in the fashion realm. And so Slow Factory, another space in New York that does a lot of free classes, was kind of my introduction to the world of sustainability.
Wonderful. I like it.
Yeah, me too.
We find our callings through all sorts of paths.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, I don't know, pick something, try it out, but don't despair.
No. And that can be, the biggest challenge. I mean, it's easy to get pulled down by
climate fatigue. Yeah.
And
take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But yes, it is real.
Yeah.
It is a real thing.
So, Jonnie, where can people go to find out more information?
Yes. So hempitecture, kind of spelled like architecture, HEMPITECURE. I guess it'll be written on this, so I don't know why I'm spelling it for you guys. Hempitecture.com. If you're curious about quotes on hemp wool, you can go to buyhempwool.com. You can find us on the social media channels, not TikTok, but everything else at Hempitecture. Yeah, feel free, connect with me on LinkedIn if you're curious to talk. But yeah.
And Jonnie, you're here in Seattle with us, and involved in the Northwest Eco Building Guild as well, which is a great community of people that are trying to make a difference.
Totally.
So it's good to know that you're you're connected there too.
Yeah, no, again, that community, that's the thing. We got it. And so there's some really exciting things happening in Seattle. I mean, there's really great federal incentives happening right now for energy efficiency improvements in homes. And so stay tuned via our newsletter on our website. I'm sure you guys will be posting a lot of updates and other exciting conversations. But thanks again for having me.
Yeah, it was great having you. Thanks for being here. That was Jonnie Pedersen of Hempitecture, based in Sun Valley, Idaho. I also want to thank everyone listening in and hope you'll tune in again for more in-depth conversations with inspirational guests from the world of sustainable design. The Living Shelter podcast is a project of Board and Vellum, a multidisciplinary design firm practicing architecture, interior design, and landscape architecture for residential, commercial, and civic projects. From our studio in Seattle, I'm your host, Terry Phelan. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.